All right, folks, it is quarter of, and we are going to get rocking and rolling with our next presentation. It's From His to Purr, Keeping Kittens in Lifelong Homes with Tabitha Kucera. Tabitha is an elite fear-free and low-stress handling certified registered veterinary technician, a certified cat behavior consultant through the International Association of Animal Behavior Consultants, and a Karen Pryor Academy certified training partner, and one of only 30 veterinary technician specialists in behavior. She's the owner of Chirrups and Chatter Cat and Dog Behavior Consulting and Training in Cleveland, Ohio. Tabitha has been working with cats and dogs for over 15 years, and in that time has worked with a number of rescue organizations and small animal practices where she dedicated herself to learning about the prevention, root causes, and solutions to feline and canine behavioral concerns. She helps people better understand and relate to their animal companions, which leads to a strong bond and a more gratifying relationship between animals and humans. Her teaching credentials include lecturing on the regional and national level and lecturing at multiple veterinary technology programs. Her lectures cover relevant topics such as canine and feline body language, cooperative care, fear-free and low-stress handling, feline and canine aggression, prevention and management for common behavior concerns, and many others. She's a fear-free certified speaker, a fear-free practice certification consultant, and host of the podcast Tales from a Vet Tech. Tabitha has helped to develop training and behavior programs for various veterinary hospitals and shelters and works as a consultant for many shelters and private veterinary practices. All right, Tabitha, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you for the mouthful. If you can't already tell, I love behavior. So, and medicine as well, because behavior is medicine. But I am so stoked to be here. Thank you so much for the kind welcome, Stacy. And I'm going to get started. So, first things first, what is socialization? This is a word I hear thrown around a lot. The definitions that people may feel it is generally not the case, but the way we simply define socialization is the process in which appropriate social behaviors are developed towards both other cats and humans. And as we all know, unsocialized cats, we will commonly refer to them as community cats or feral cats. So some of the goals of socialization, which I'll get more into, are essentially to learn what behaviors are okay and what are not, and that humans aren't scary, along with lots of other things not being scary. But socialization can be challenging because, real talk, cats have a very short key socialization period. Honestly, it's 2 to 7 weeks. We don't have as much research as we do in dogs, but thankfully we do have research. And a kitten socialization period is 2 to 7 weeks, but we do consider it up to 14 weeks. But during that, especially kind of 2 to 9 week period, the kittens have no fear. So they're bonding with others, their siblings, new environmental things feel safe for them. So essentially, they're checking things out. They don't necessarily feel afraid in those moments. And if they do startle, they easily recover. But after that period, as you can imagine, their default setting becomes fear. So that's why if you've ever heard, oh, after 14 weeks, socializing is a very challenging thing. If you're reading research or even handouts out there made from some of the larger animal organizations or even me, that's where we are mentioning, hey, if they're 20 weeks old, the likelihood of that cat doing well, even with someone like me working with them, which most people don't have that kind of behavior experience, is a lot more challenging. And as a general rule, when this window is missed, which let's be honest, most of us aren't getting kittens at that time. Some of us are in kitten rescue. So even better, you can do a lot of things to help set them up for success. But after that key socialization period, we're essentially working on brain pathways that have already been developed, and we're teaching the cat to unlearn them and learn something new. And as you can imagine, just by nature, that takes a lot more effort, education, and there is somewhat of a cap on where we can go with that cat. But the great thing is, let's say you're taking neonates in, you can start doing some of the things I'm going to talk about towards the end right away. We're going to just pair lots of different experiences in a controlled setting with good things from the start, and this cat is going to do great. But even if it's after that key socialization period, there is a lot we can do to make a difference and help that cat be more comfortable with life. Essentially, socialization is life skills. And of course, lots of things affect behavior. This is true of dogs, cats, and humans. So there are a lot of other things that affect behavior: genetics, right? Chronic stress, nutrition, trauma, environment. For example, I commonly hear people say bottle kittens tend to be more fearful, single kitten, all of these labels that I commonly hear. But most likely, what's the cause of that is it's very likely that their mother may have experienced malnutrition. So that mother is experiencing trauma, which then affects brain development of the kittens and the ability for them to learn in the future. And then also, let's say a kitten was abandoned by or separated by their mother for multiple reasons at a young age. That is a chronic stressor. And that's what more, I think that's what's contributes more to these singleton kitten behaviors, this label that I hear used a lot. It's most likely they were separated from their mother at a key socialization period, 2 weeks, 1 week, 3 weeks, and that's a chronic stressor. And the likelihood that their mother wasn't dealing with chronic stressors is unlikely. It's very high that their mother was dealing with chronic stressors. So we need to consider all of that when it comes to kittens, right? We want to consider, is their mom and dad present? Are the presence of their siblings and other cats? We're going to talk a little bit about handling it. And again, this is more 2 to 7 weeks. There's a lot of research to support if we handle the cats for four different people handle the kittens at this very young age. I mean, this is that 2 to 7 week age frame, 15 minutes a day that they do really well. But after the 7-week period, as you can imagine, handling a kitten is still helpful, but the likelihood that they're going to be showing some signs of discomfort or conflict, and that we have to make sure that cat chooses to come to us, we need to make it positive. But during that 2 to 7 week period, most interactions are fairly positive for the kitten. And we're just, hey, we're going to just get you familiar with touching different things, with seeing different people. But I think it's also really important to remember that lots of factors are involved in behavior. That's why it's so much fun. Never simple. And then I think it's really important to note that socialization is not exposure. So I see this with dogs, but I also see this commonly with cats, where socialization gets very misunderstood and misinterpreted as exposure. So socialization is not just exposing a learner to lots of different things. It's all about exposing the learner to something in a controlled setting where you can control the environment, and assessing that kitten's body language, making sure that it's positive for them, and then pairing it with good stuff. That's what socialization is. It's not just passing the kitten around. It's not like, hey, we're going to put you in a room with other cats, a dog, bright lights, lots of sounds. We're not controlling the environment, but we're occasionally giving you a treat. It's about exposing them to a small amount of things in a controlled setting while assessing their body language, making sure it's positive, and pairing it with good stuff. So we also want to think of socialization as concepts to train and life skills. It's all about helping your kitten make proactive decisions in their environment to provide reinforcement. And it's not about tolerating. I hear so many people do the whole, I'm going to feed them out of my hand and then pet them, and the cat is showing, similar to this small orange kitten, people may misinterpret this as a relaxed cat. This cat is frozen in fear. He's pretty terrified. Everything is closed in. His whiskers are going down. His ears are out to the side. There's tension in his face. Those almond-shaped pupils are turning round or getting round. This kitten is very uncomfortable. But other people may misinterpret that, and they're like, but he's eating. I'm like, if his body language looks like this, I eat when I'm upset. So it's really important, because I see a lot online, hey, feed the cat out of your hand and then pet them, and the kitten looks like this. You are teaching that cat, hey, you have to do a life function. You need food. You're terrified, but I'm going to make you even more fearful of people. Versus, hey, I'm going to give you food away from my terrifying hand. It's not personal, everybody, but you are scary if the kitten is exhibiting body language like this. I'm going to give you food away from me because that's less scary. And then we're going to work up to touch and petting later on. So again, it's not just teaching them to tolerate. Oh, they tolerate petting. I'm like, if my partner was like, Tabitha tolerates hugs, I don't know if we should be together, right? So socialization is super important for multiple reasons, as I'm sure all you amazing people understand. It teaches life skills. So this is a need. This is not a want, right? It improves the foundations for lifelong learning. Cats are more likely to find lifelong loving homes. I commonly lecture at animal welfare conferences, and I like to focus on the positive. And we're doing a lot of amazing things. We call it practicing vet med or animal welfare because we're always improving. And we've gotten really great at spay and neuter and getting animals adopted. Now our focus should be keeping the animal in the home, animal retention, right? And a big part of this is teaching these kittens the life skills along with speaking to caregivers, but that's a separate lecture. I only can cover so much. So with appropriate socialization, fewer cats will be unnecessarily euthanized, fewer cats will be relinquished to shelters, and there's just quite a lot of results of poor socialization. So we love cats as a society, which I love, but big old but. A lot of cats enter shelters every year. Cats are the #1 pet in the household. More than half of them are not receiving veterinary care. That is severely concerning, right? Behavior concerns are one of the top reasons cats are relinquished to shelters, and behavior concerns are one of the most common causes of euthanasia in pet cats. So if we're giving these kittens the life skills to be able to deal with changes in the home, hey, the caregiver went out of town. I work with a lot of cats who will get cystitis, a very painful inflammation of the bladder that can cause house soiling, because again, behavior is medicine. Chronic stress shows up in physical ways, manifestations. And now that cat is house soiling, but that cat was not comfortable with even a small change because they didn't receive appropriate socialization. Or someone says, hey, I'm introducing another cat. Most people don't introduce appropriately, but I know Pam's going to talk. She talked all about that, which is great. But they're like, why doesn't my cat get along with other cats? Well, if your cat never experienced other cats, and if they did experience other cats, it wasn't supervised, it wasn't controlled, no one was assessing body language, they weren't short sessions. This kitten's experience with other animals are either none or not good. So there's a lot of things that we could do to help set these kittens up for success. And a big part of that includes making veterinary visits, carriers, all of those things positive, which will then help caregivers encourage them to take their cats to the vet and understand the importance of veterinary care. And then also, unfortunately, there's a huge misunderstanding of cats and their needs. That's just true. A lot of caregivers are unaware of enrichment for cats. I'll be honest, in my 10 years of consulting, I've seen an appropriate litter box set up maybe less than 10 times to start. And again, that's not me throwing shade. I didn't have an appropriate one as a veterinary technician before I became specialized in behavior and learned all of this stuff, but that's just helpful data for us to know. There's a huge misunderstanding of cats and their needs. Cat products that are sold, the more we learn about cats, I don't know what's going on, but the worse the products are. With dogs, the more research we get about dogs, the products are more made for dogs. Litter boxes and carriers just getting smaller and smaller is just one example of how even what caregivers who love their cats are being sold aren't meeting basic cat needs, right? We also have a huge image problem for cats. I love Disney, but every cat in Disney movies is a villain. Cats are vilified in our society. Cats are said to be mysterious, aloof, dumb, grumpy. None of those are true. Grumpy cats tend to be painful cats. Cats are not mysterious or aloof. I can explain to you what they're doing and why they're doing it just by assessing their body language, which is the way they communicate. But again, even people who love cats are using these really dangerous labels and kind of, again, we love cats, but where they're, again, all those silly memes, I can't think of one, but there's so many out there. Oh, like the one, they have 32 muscles in their ear to ignore us. No, actually, they have 32 muscles in their ear because they're prey and predator animals, and they're way awesome So I have to turn my head when I hear a sound. They just have to turn their ear. But again, these are the labels and myths that even cat lovers are really promoting, let alone society. We also have a huge lack of healthcare, which I already touched on. And I'll be honest, as a veterinary technician and a behavior professional, the amount of medical issues that I see either be the main cause or a contributing factor in my behavior cases, it's more than 65%. So as you can imagine, if cats aren't getting their general care, the more likely that those are going to show in the way for caregivers through behavior problems. And sometimes they reach out to the shelter or they just open their door and they didn't even realize, hey, your cat doesn't house soil out of spite. Cats and dogs don't feel spite. I love humans, but that's a human thing. And this cat hasn't even had a basic medical workup or has never had pain meds. These are just common things I see. So that lack of healthcare really affects things. And then of course, that abandonment, relinquishment, euthanasia. So we all know how important socialization is. And these are some general goals of socialization. And these are more for, I'm speaking of some of those older kittens. So after, I'm going to focus more on after the 9-week mark, which is where we're most likely getting these kittens. So like 12 weeks, 14 weeks, maybe even 16 weeks. And at 20 weeks, we can still make a difference. But these are some general goals because I'm a very criteria-based person as a behavior person. So for the kitten to approach you without fear, but also others, for the kittens to seek attention from people by approaching them and asking for giving consent to pet them. Because a cat just approaching you is not them giving you consent to pet them. Just like me just approaching a human doesn't give them consent to make out with me, right? A cat on my lap does not mean, that's not consent to pet them. I may just want to cuddle close to my partner. That doesn't give him consent to do lots of other things, right? We also want to train behaviors. So I teach kitten kindergarten a lot, but those where we do essentially teach targeting, sit, walking on a harness and leash, and lots of other fun behaviors for the kittens to associate potential fearful situation. And what I mean by potentially fearful situations that I see most cats are afraid of with positive experiences. So things like car rides, nail trims, handling, vet visits. It's all about boosting confidence, broadening life experiences, reducing fear. And then a huge part of kitten kindergarten classes especially is about educating caregivers about cats, letting them know what normal cat behavior is, letting them know when to be concerned about a symptom they may be seeing to contact their vet. And when we teach caregivers to meet cats' needs, as you can imagine, we have a lot less behavior issues, but we also have a stronger human-animal bond and more empathy towards their cat. So I'm going to get a little into the science of learning because once these kittens are a little older, or if we're working with fearful kittens, and this all applies to fearful adult cats as well. So the great news is some of these tips I share, I work with a lot of very fearful adult cats, and these techniques can be really helpful as well. But I think it's important to understand a little bit about how humans and animals, cats, dogs, and us learn. So I like to talk about habituation and sensitization. These are big words, but they're just forms of non-associative learning, which means it's not necessarily associated with anything specific. So the animal just learns to either ignore or attend closely to a stimulus. So some examples, you on your cell phone. Most cats have nothing good or bad that happens with that. It's neutral, right? So we have a neutral thing and nothing good or bad happens. Or the TV being on, that's another one. A lot of humans have habituated to that. I habituated to wearing a watch. I put it on, nothing good or bad happens. So I got used to it, right? Versus sensitization, in which I notice the stimuli. So I think of a vacuum, right? So many people are like, my kitten or my puppy watched the vacuum, and they may have not been able to recognize the more subtle signs of conflict that they were showing. And then 6 months later, they're like, I just go to the closet where my vacuum is and my cat runs under the bed. So that cat has generalized not only the vacuum being on, but you going to the area where their vacuum is and feeling the same fight or flight response that they feel when that vacuum is going. So what happened there is they noticed the stimuli as they did with the phone and the TV, but it was scary for them. So each time they experienced it, they had a more explosive reaction as far as feeling fear or stress. Or again, this might be a dog that they're seeing as well. And the great thing about animals is they're always learning, which I know can be a lot of pressure, but I think it's great because that means every interaction I have with an animal, I can make a positive difference by assessing their body language, using considerate approach, doing what I can to decrease stressors in the environment. As a vet tech and as someone that works in animal welfare, I have to do things to animals that may not be the most comfortable, but a lot of them do really well. And it's because I'm doing all of those things. So classical conditioning is just learning through association. Animals are always learning. These responses are not under the learner's control. So for example, I'm going to share some human examples later, so I don't even have to get into that yet. So this is more for prevention. So this is where that key socialization comes in. Hey, we're going to leave a carrier out and just put good stuff in it. We're going to handle you at 2 to 7 weeks and have a few people handle you for short periods of time, and you're not exhibiting signs of fear and stress. Cool. If, let's say, we were using the vacuum, that's not classical conditioning because now there's a negative emotional response. So this is the boring scientific definition. Don't worry about it, but look at the lovely photos. So many of you probably, your cats know a recall, even though you don't know that you taught a recall. So many of you, a neutral stimulus. So what I mean by neutral means the cat feels no fear or not happy. It's just neutral. It's a pen for me. I don't feel great or bad. It's just neutral, right? Versus food, in which the unconditioned response is, again, they can't control their emotions just like us. They're stoked, right? So what happens is many caregivers open cans of food with a can opener, and they pair that because you open cans of food all the time, consistently 2 to 3 times a day. So then what happens is you just grab the can opener and your cat's running. You don't even have the food out yet because the cat, because of classical conditioning, because we've paired that neutral thing that didn't indicate good or bad with something good repeatedly. Now, even without the food, the cat's like, whoa, I'm stoked. I'm running, I'm meowing, I'm excited. My tail is up and curved. Mom, it might even be you just opening a specific cabinet. And this is true for us too, right? So we all have different associations with various stimuli, so do our animals. Some of you may feel like I feel, because I don't know all of your beautiful learning history. Some of you may look at this cookie and be like, I'm feeling warm and cozy. I'm thinking of my grandma. That's what I'm doing. But some of you may have had food poisoning after eating this cookie and start to feel nauseous. This is a dentist chair. I don't even like to look at it because I have severe fear and stress associated with dental offices as well as dental care. And just looking at this photo escalates my heart rate. My body starts to tense up. There are physiological changes happening to my body that I can't control. That's what classical conditioning is all about. But what often happens with socialization, which I touched on a little bit earlier, is sensitization. So because people say things like, oh, the cat will just get used to it. That doesn't happen. And if it does, that's what habituation is. But for that to truly be habituation, nothing good or bad happens. They notice the stimuli. They know the TV is on. Nothing good or bad happens. That's habituation. Them being like maybe showing some displacement behaviors, they're lip licking, they're looking away. When the vacuum is on, they jump away from it. That is not, they're going to get used to it. It's going to get more scary every single time they experience that. So as you can see here, an animal becomes more aware of a stimulus after repeated exposure. The stimulus may be loud, painful, or frightening. They do not grow out of it. And I say that as a behavior professional because I hear a lot in cats and dogs, people say things, they'll grow out of it. Your child will also not grow out of their fear. We need to address it. I wish it was that simple, but it just isn't, right? And then the behavior responses are more pronounced, right? So people are like, hey, when he was with the foster at 14 weeks, he tolerated it. They might use that word. And then the caregiver who adopted the cat contacts me after a year and says, I just grabbed the nail trimmers and he runs. So each experience has been worse and worse for that animal. So understandably, now it just the sight of the nail trimmers, not even near them or with the caregiver touching, the cat is experiencing severe fear and stress. And this is what we call flooding. So, which is how, unfortunately, kitten socialization is often recommended as a technique through larger animal organizations, but just overall. And again, know better, do better. We're all learning new techniques. The cool thing about this field, like I already said, know better, do better. So what commonly happens is we flood or sensitize. So we expose them to what they're afraid of full force. So 2 examples of this is these hoodies. So as you can see, there's more than one kitten in here, which is concerning in its own right, because that cat can't turn around or move. They can redirect to each other. They can injure each other. It's not safe just from a safety standpoint, but from a socialization standpoint, no one is assessing these kittens' body language. And they are literally walking around exposing them to so much stressful stimuli. They are flooding. They're like, humans are scary, bright lights are scary, walking is scary. That's what we're teaching these cats. We are not helping. We are flooding them, right? Or Elvira, this shows my age from Looney Tunes. This cat is not enjoying this hug. Elvira is, and I love humans, but we have to care about both species. This cat is not enjoying this hug. So that's also flooding, where she's obviously afraid, but the human is like, I'm gonna hold you and this is gonna help. But this cat is terrified and actively trying to get away. Or what often happens is, similar to that orange kitten picture I showed, that kitten was frozen in fear. So if your learning history is, as a learner, human or cat, that you try to escape, you show a lot of signals that you're uncomfortable, and nothing ever, they just pick you up again, that cat learned helplessness. So I've given signals to indicate I'm not enjoying this multiple times, and it never stops, and they just keep doing it. So I give up, similar to someone in an abusive relationship. And I see that happen a lot with kittens because of the whole, we're going to pet while we feed them, even though they're frozen in fear, or we're going to hold them, even though they're frozen in fear. I see this every week. Thankfully, I'm here to tell you all about what to do instead. So if there is a negative association, so again, usually we're past that key socialization period, and you might notice by the time you have the cat in your amazing care, as the awesome foster you are, or the animal welfare professional that you are, you may notice that they're fearful of just me from a distance. They're fearful of me sitting or standing up. So that tells us that's their non-stressful starting point. You far away, right? So that tells me that cat has a very strong negative association with humans. And again, it's not personal, it's just helpful information. So in that case, instead of flooding, being like, I'm going to hold you and pet you while you're frozen in fear, we're going to do desensitization and classical counterconditioning. So again, desensitization is, instead of flooding, we gradually expose the animal to something. So instead of just picking them up, I might add my hand near my waist 5 feet away. Then I might add my hand out to my stomach. But we're pairing that with treats, and that's what classical counterconditioning is. So classical conditioning is we're just pairing through association. It's always happening. They're learning. All of your cats are learning right now based on everything that's in their environment right now, this second. Classical counterconditioning is where we are changing the pet's emotional response. And a flooding example I like to use for humans, for us, because analogies are really helpful, is if you, hopefully none of you are, but if you were afraid of spiders and I threw you in a closet full of spiders, so that's exposing you to what you're afraid of full force, not only, everybody, will you still be afraid of spiders, but when you come out of that closet, the likelihood that you have now generalized your fear, so it's actually increased, not just to seeing a spider, but let's say you see a speck of dust or black lint from one of your black t-shirts, you feel the same fight or flight response when you see that piece of black lit or dust than you do when you feel a spider. So not only are you afraid of spiders now, but you've generalized that fear to things that kind of look like a spider, which is why we want to avoid flooding. And instead, I would ask you, as with cats, I assess their body language because they do communicate with us. But with a human, I would assess your body language and ask you, because most communication with humans is also body language and not actually what they're saying. But I may start with a stuffed spider 100 feet away. I've done this at conferences, and some people are like, I've said a real spider, and they're like, nope, that's not my non-stressful starting point. I want a stuffed spider. Fair. And we start from like 100 feet away. And every time you look at the spider, I give you $100. Or that's just a quick example. So we're starting at a non-stressful starting point, which is individual to each learner. And then we're pairing each point with something good. So for example, we're pairing something good to change the emotional state. So this is all about emotions. This isn't me just saying stop being stressed. This is us working through starting in a non-stressful point, pairing it with good stuff, actually changing how the cat feels about the scary thing. So this is just an example. Nail trimmers, their current emotional response is they start to tense up, their fear, anxiety, and stress escalates. Food separately, they feel really good about. So I pair the food with clippers along with desensitization. So we're not just, here's some clippers, here's some food. For some cats, it might be clippers not in a hand on a table, then in a hand. So that's where we have to kind of come up with a plan. It's not just pairing the scary thing with food. We also have to make sure that cat is exhibiting minimal to no signs of stress. So essentially, we want to change associations from negative to positive, make a plan, set up environment for success. I'm going to get more into all of this stuff. Stay below threshold. And what I mean by that, minimal to no signs of stress. When a cat is over threshold or a human is over threshold, they can't think or focus, they can't learn, right? So we want to make sure it stays positive. And then along with classical conditioning and classical counter conditioning and desensitization, we also use operant conditioning, and that's completely different. So those first three things, those first five things I talked about are not controlled by the learner. Like your emotions, you can't control it. You can't be like, I'm crying. You're crying because you saw something sad. It's like an emotional state. Operant conditioning is more about focusing on a behavior where the animal makes a choice and there's a consequence. So it's all about consequence, learning through consequence, trial and error learning. So I focus on positive reinforcement, which is adding something the learner likes to increase the frequency of a behavior. So for example, something happens, we have a behavior and the consequence. So this may be for you, your alarm goes off, ugh, your behavior, you get up and go to work, consequence, paycheck. So you keep doing that. If you didn't get your paycheck, as you should, you would stop going to work because that consequence changed, right? This might be if I'm teaching a cat a sit, antecedent, I cue a sit, so I might say the verbal cue, sit. B, behavior, cat's butt is on the ground. C, I give treat. So that behavior is more likely to increase in the future. And when it comes to reinforcers, it's important that, and this is more for when we get into training, which to start with some of these fearful cats, we're going to start by just building relationships before we start training. But it has to be reinforcing to the cat. We don't want to take any reinforcer for granted, because I understand this cat might love Churu, but this one might not. And we have to figure out what they really like before we start training. And we're going to see if this video is our friend. Kristen's going to let me know if it isn't. But we can utilize scent as a reinforcer, play as a reinforcer, brushing as a reinforcer. I utilize lots of things as reinforcers, because some cats I'm working with have medical issues and have stomach upset and aren't feeling well. And if a cat is not food motivated, that's data, because all cats are food motivated. They need it to live. But if they aren't eating, that tells me they may be painful. They may be in an environment that's too stressful. Our clicker mechanics may not be good. So it's It's not that they don't want food, because they need food. It's, or the food might not be highly reinforcing to that specific learner, but it's data. So this is me using a brush. I was teaching this cat how to use an inhaler. This was first steps, and he doesn't feel good. So he loves brushing. So his reinforcer was me brushing from his neck to the base of his tail twice.
And you see, for him, I'm not increasing the criteria as quickly because he's still.
You're so handsome. So I think it's important to remember all animals are food motivated. If the cat isn't eating, that's data. That can mean so many different things, but we need to not just say my cat's not food motivated. We need to identify why your cat isn't, right? And then also we can utilize so many different reinforcers, because that's a common myth that I hear, like play, brushing, smells. Oh, we could go so far with it. So now that we understand a little bit, and I know that was a lot, but just some basic foundations of how animals learn, because to be fair for everybody, it's really hard to help fearful cats if we don't understand how they learn, right? 100%. So I think that's a really important thing to get out of the way. So fearful and feral kittens. To start, setting up a comfortable environment. Just these steps here, even without the behavior modification, are life-changing. The amount of cats, because I consult with shelters on challenging behavior cases for kittens and older cats, and when we just do these things, the difference and decrease in fear, anxiety, and stress are huge. So I'm going to set up a comfortable environment, which I'll talk a little bit more about. I'm going to meet physical and mental needs. So that means enrichment, right? And this is just one example of an enrichment schedule that I make them for my clients, for every cat and dog that I work with. And it might just be set enrichment or ping pong balls in a basket. Cats love these because they move like prey on their own. But there's a lot of different ways that we can enrich a cat, even in a shelter setting, that takes 5 seconds. It's minimal to no time for you as a human, but we're meeting that cat's needs for an extended period of time. Of course, we want to manage and address medical issues, nutrition. We want to have them be in an environment where they feel safe and they can perform species-specific behaviors. So we're going to have different outlets for them to scratch. We're going to have vertical spaces, hiding places. We're going to give them opportunities to smell different things and bunny kick stuff. Again, we're going to let a cat be a cat. We're going to assess and respect body language. It takes time to learn how to really read a cat. I'll be honest with you, as a technician, I didn't learn much to anything about body language. I learned through doing, this cat's unsure because they're hissing. Now I can literally describe how a cat is feeling and point out why, like 50 reasons why, but it took me time to get there. So I think learning body language and purchasing books and doing webinars and testing yourself is such an important skill, because we can't work with kittens. We can't interact with them appropriately. We can't socialize them if we don't really understand body language well. And then we want to utilize considerate approach. So this is just one example of considerate approach in a shelter setting. So I'm going to move, I move to the side. I do curves a lot. I never come direct. I open the cage. Every shelter is different. Thankfully, we're getting quieter cages, but they're very costly. So most of these shelter cages are very loud. So I'm very gentle the way I open the cage. I did not reach my hand out at the cat. The cat chose to come out, leaned into my hand. I petted once or twice on the head, shoulders, and neck. Removed my hand, they leaned in again. I petted for 1 to 2 seconds. And then you're gonna see the way I close the cage. This is how I would consider a considerate approach. This is what not to do. So I'm not paying attention. I'm talking to someone else. I reach, I loom over the cage, and then I make sure it's closed. All the vibrations, all the scary loud sounds. And it's interesting because I have a stuffed cat in there. Because even though this is how I see most people interacting with cats, and usually they might even be playing music in like on their phone or something. So there's also, it's not a purr sound or classical music. It's like, maybe I like hardcore and punk. I do not play that when I'm working with animals, because they don't like that, and it's not about me. It's about them. And actually, I like classical music now, surprisingly, that I've listened to it so much. But you can't really see, but this kitten on the bottom, you might not be able to see it. You probably can't see because my legs. Yeah. But the kitten on the bottom actually freezes for a second and shows some subtle conflict behaviors. So not only did my fake, how most people open cages, would cause fear to the cat in the cage, but that actually causes fear to the cats around the cage. And some general considerations for cages: we want to carefully and thoughtfully choose cage or run location. So for example, if I have a really fearful cat, they should be higher up. That is just a great general rule. If you have a really fearful cat, they should be higher up. Another thing I could do, let's say I have a cat room and there's a door, because we walk in with a door. I'm going to put the fearful cat the farthest away from that door, so people aren't walking in and out right next to that cage as often. I may put them in a quieter environment if I have that opportunity. But there's a lot of things we can do, even in, because all of the shelters and clinics I work in are different. But in any space, there are things we can do to decrease stress. Ideally, we're going to have a separate location for each species. Double compartment housing, similar to this, where we're creating those portals. Thankfully, those are so much more accessible and fairly easy to install, which is great. So this is an example of a appropriate cat housing situation. So this would be ideal for every cat, but especially for your fearful cat. So we have this raised bed. So it's a vertical space and a hiding place, which is great. They did their best to increase the space in the small cage by putting the food and water on the door. They have quiet hinges, which not every shelter can do that, and I understand that, but we can also be gentle with the way we approach. We have a stretch and scratch. We also, even if they have a hidey box, which every cat needs a hiding box, that is as important as water and food. If they are exhibiting signs of fear and stress, they should also have a curtain or a towel over their cage. If you are experiencing fear or stress or pain, every stimuli is more intense for you. So I see a lot of people who are like, they have a box, we don't need to cover their cage, and this cat is frozen in fear. Yes, you do. We need to minimize the stressful stimuli to the best of our ability. And by just setting up an appropriate low stress housing situation, or if you're in a foster room, we would do something similar, it makes a really big difference. And then of course, we all know about the importance of routine. Thankfully, I see this being done all the time. Structure and stability for your kitten is important. And a big part of that is that stable, safe environment, which we kind of touched on. But we feed at the same time. We're going to talk about some other techniques that we like to do around the same time. I'm going to spot clean. I'm not going to reset all of your linens, even in a cage setting. Obviously, if there is excrement or something on it, we will change it. But cats communicate via scent. Scent is very important. I'm not going to reset the cat every single time if I don't have to. And again, we want to do our best to be predictable, and shelters tend to be really good about this because we have schedules, but fosters are great at this too. Resting and respect, this is a huge one. So a lot of people do this, which I love. You just chill. I just want you to sit in the corner and not talk to the cat and read, right? You're not going to pet them. You're not going to engage with them at all unless they choose to. So we're not forcing contact. Unless that kitten chooses to approach you with softer body language and leans into your hand, that is what consent is. Not them just coming up and then walking away really quick, jumping like, ooh, I'm going to smell you. You reach your hand out and then they jump away. Yeah, I understand that, because that startled them and that was not a positive experience for them. And then also, when it comes to fearful animals, although enrichment is important, if for all of you lovely people, including myself, who have chronic stress, sometimes when you have chronic stress, learning and interacting with new things, or even experiencing your normal species-specific behaviors, are challenging. So when it comes to fearful cats, I usually start with scent enrichment, which may be me just putting some cat grass in there. It could be me taking a very loose crinkle paper that we get in the box, a very small amount of it, and wrapping a piece of like Fancy Feast fish fillet in it, so it's so loose that the cat could just find it, and then we can make it more challenging as the cat becomes more confident. It might just be giving some silver vine, valerian root, dandelion, like a little sprinkle of it in a box that they could play in. But scent enrichment is a really great thing because sometimes some of the cats I work with are so fearful, like we can't do an interactive cat toy, or although I love puzzle toys, more challenging ones, that's going to be more challenging for that cat. So I might start by just, oh, I'm going to put 5 treats throughout your cage. That's scent work. That's scent enrichment. But also I'm a huge fan of play as a way to help these kittens as a first enrichment activity. And when I say that, I want this wand toy to be so far away from you. So unfortunately, a lot of wand toys are not long enough. I tend to tie shoelaces together only under supervision. And obviously we take it away because we don't want a foreign body, right? But I tend to tie shoelaces together because then it's super duper long, super cheap. And I place it under a towel at a distance, and I just move it slowly. We're not lifting it up in the air yet because my hand moving is scary. I'm just going to move it very slowly, do more groundwork with the toy. And even if the cat is just looking at it, that is part of the kill prey cycle. Because what we're doing with play is we're simulating them hunting. Because a lot of people are like, the cat doesn't play. And I'm like, he's watching it. That's play. And that's a really good place to start. You're not going to talk, right? You're going to play with them in a calmer way. We're going to make play more enticing by like maybe wiggling it around a cat scratcher or something else to simulate prey, but we're not and then we'll work up to, as the cat is more comfortable, lifting it up, moving it more, getting different toys that are a little shorter. But I think that those are the first 2 enrichment activities I really like to start to do, especially with these fearful guys. So we set up a beautiful environment because, again, I cannot tell you how much of a difference that makes. The decrease in fear, anxiety, and stress I see in cats with just thoughtful placement, setting up the environment to reduce stressors to the ability we can and allow them to have species-specific behaviors is huge. We are resting, we're not forcing contact, we're providing positive routine structure, all of that lovely stuff. Then now that we've had that foundation, because that's a need, we can start working on building relationships. And to start, we're going to build a relationship with you, and then we'll work up to building relationships with other people. So I'm going to get a little bit more into each of these. So picnicking is the best thing ever. I love it. It's very simple. I utilize this for, again, adult cats a lot as well. So essentially what you do is you just find a high value reinforcer for that kitten. And at the same time each day, separate from feeding, you enter the room using considerate approach, leave, treat, and exit room. So if this is a foster room, it's going to look a little different than a cage, but let's say it's a cage, you are going to find a high value, usually the smellier, the grosser. And you may even, to start, place it in the cage with a back scratcher very gently, so your hand is even farther away, because those we can extend to start, because that cat to start will probably be hiding, and that's fine. So you approach using a side approach. You don't talk, you don't look at the cat, you put the treat down and you leave. That's it. And we're doing a lot of in-depth behavior modification. I'm just making it very simple. And what you do, the first day, the cat may not eat it, and that's okay, that's data. And then let's say the 4th day you go and you keep doing that exact thing, because a lot of people start talking and petting, and I'm like, nope, nope, nope. You just come in, leave a treat, leave. Because not only is that treat reinforcing, but also you leaving is very reinforcing. Because again, it's not personal, but you're scary. So we're not hanging out. It's literally putting the treat down calmly, walking away. And that is a consistent, predictable human interaction for that cat, which is really powerful. So what happens is, let's say the 4th day, the cat starts eating it as you're walking away. The 7th day, you notice that the cat's peeking their head out and eats it even like right when you turn. The 9th day, they're out of their box towards the front of the cage and they eat it as soon as you put it down. What? Most simplest behavior modification ever. And that tells me once they're comfortable eating in front of you and being more out when you approach, then we can start clicker training. But just this step, all my caregivers can do this. All people in a shelter have 2 seconds. And the power of this exercise, because again, the cat's learning, a predictable positive interaction with the human. And it also gives us data, right? Are they ready? If they're not comfortable eating in front of me, and we're going to rule out and address medical issues that could be contributing to that, we're going to build a relationship first and a bond. And that's what this is doing. You most likely have lots of treats. These are just the treats that a lot of the cats I work with really enjoy. I barely use baby food anymore, but 5 years ago, I'll be honest, I used that a lot. I kind of forgot I haven't bought baby food in which I'm fine with because it is very expensive. So these are just a few examples of what we could use. And then we've built a relationship so we can start utilizing some clicker training. And I'll be honest, in most cases with these really fearful cats, I'm not using a marker to start. So I'm just reinforcing right after the behavior, and I'm not using I tongue click a lot or a clicker. But what a clicker is essentially a vet marker. So it's just something that pinpoints or marks the moment in time when the animal exhibits the desired behavior. So it could be lots of things. Like I use a flashlight for training fish. So you can kind of think of your clicker as a camera. Each time you click, you're taking a snapshot of the behavior at that moment and you're communicating. I think of it as the hot and cold game. I love clickers because they allow me to communicate with the cat. Hey, this is the behavior I'd like, or this is the behavior, we're working up towards this behavior. Yes, I'm communicating with them. We're working together. And essentially, this is me really simplifying the training process, right? We watch for the behavior, we mark it, and then we reinforce. So something I'm a huge fan of, because we teach targeting and lots of other things, but I'm not going to get too into those today. But capturing is the most amazing thing ever, along with picnicking. So it's the process of marking and reinforcing a behavior the cat does naturally. This is a very powerful behavior modification technique. It builds trust. It builds confidence. It teaches the cat that their own actions can make clicks and treats happen. And in this video, I am capturing a sit. But when I'm working with a fearful cat, I usually focus on eye contact, weight shifted forward. And by weight shifted forward, that might be head up or head down to up. It might be shifting their weight forward a tiny bit. Sometimes it's an actual step forward, but we have to start where they're successful. And usually I'll teach eye contact separately later, but I usually just focus on staying where they are, even if it's away from me, and shifting their weight forward in any way and looking at me. But this is an example where you see I'm not talking, I'm not cueing because he doesn't know the behavior yet. And I'm just watching and capturing it when he does it. And this cat has a history of clicker training, so as well as positive reinforcement training. So he's like, what, do you want me to go on this? He's offering other behaviors, which is really great. He's like, do you want me to sit on this? He's like, do you want me to put my back feet on this? I love it so much. And it's also a great way to teach other behaviors. So this is an example of capturing in the moment. So I was working at a rescue and his 4 other siblings were very outgoing and confident. And we were working on getting them comfortable with handling, sounds, so some of the other socialization stuff, but I have to build a relationship first. And I happened to see that this guy was fearful. So I just put a dollop of Chiru away and I went to work with the other cats. I was like, and then I was like, well, I'm in here. And he was in this cat tree. And I'm sorry, it's a little dark. This is just me, real life. I don't have any people I work with and I have to do everything myself. So this is just a real iPhone video. And this is something called a click stick, which is what I use to teach targeting. But in this context, I'm using it to deliver the reinforcer. So I'm not clicking yet. And you're going to see I'm reinforcing when he looks at me for a second. I'm far away because I want him to not have higher levels of anxiety and stress. So I'm using the click stick to deliver the reinforcer, and I deliver it to the side and not directly in front of his face because that's scary for kitties, especially fearful kitties. And you already see he's softening up a little bit and he's like, I get this game. Like he's looking at me like more intense. So this is all this is a 2-minute session, 2 to 3 minute session. And this comes with skill as you learn more, but I shortened the distance because he was comfortable with that. So I increased the criteria and he's looking at me a lot. His face is a lot softer. So cute. I love him so much. This is the same cat in the same session. So now I have a softer face cat. He's sitting up. There's a lot going on here. And this is me capturing eye contact. And again, when I say eye contact, it's a second. I don't want him to stare at me. I don't want to stare at him. This is a more soft and relaxed cat. And all I did was assess his body language, respect him, and do some capturing. His other friends are like, so there I was like, oh, I'm going to give a piece with my hand from the side. And you saw he backed up a little bit. So I was like, oh, that might have been a little too much. Maybe I should start delivering it on because even subtle anxiety, I'm aware of that. That's where body language is really important. So he's a little more comfortable with that. He's so cute. I love him. And his kitten friends are making lots of noise in the background. And with capturing, I'm not like, look at me. I'm not moving a bunch. This is literally just assessing and watching. With some of these fearful cats, I may only do 5 to 7 treats in a minute because they may only look at me or do forward movement. And at the end, you see this beautiful thing right here. He does, not only is he more soft, but he does a half stretch. Oh my gosh, that is huge. That is a normal kitten behavior in front of me. So these are things I look at. Is this cat grooming in front of you? Is this cat stretching? When they scratch, what does it look like? Their body language tells us a lot. And again, that was just a happenstance capturing session because I was there to do some socialization with the other cats. And I'm like, oh, you're a little too fearful. I'm going to work with you differently. Here's another example. For context, this was a feral adult cat. We do not bring feral cats indoors in most contexts. For context, this was a caregiver who had this colony in her backyard for 15 years. And he was a lot older and he was dealing with medical issues. And bless this amazing caregiver. She also understands like, hey, a feral cat bringing him into my home is not the most humane thing to do in most contexts. So she wanted to check in with me. So we did an assessment and I was like, I'm comfortable. Let's do this. So we did all that stuff I already talked about. Set up a cage. We even came up with a handling plan because he was ill and he needed to see the vet. He didn't have to see an emergency vet. So I was like, we're going to make a plan because I can't have him being traditionally restrained and causing more stress and fear. And thankfully, because I have a background in handling and I teach it for a living, we also work towards making handling better for him. But this is just an example of what capturing looked like for this cat. I'm going to forward it a bit. So you see the caregiver is at a distance and she's not tossing with her hand, she's tossing with her wrist. His little head is peeking out. That's forward movement. He's staying where he's at. That's forward movement. I want to provide as many opportunities for yes as possible. That's forward movement. That's forward movement. And he was a little unsure. And you can see she's not talking. These sessions are usually 1 to 3 minutes. And she's like forward movement. And this is a caregiver where we met one time and I shared some videos with her. And then she took videos because I consult a lot virtually, but this was over the pandemic. So I wasn't at her house and she did so great. So now at the beginning, he was popping out, he was popping in, but then popping back out. Now he's at least staying neutral. So she's going to reinforce that, or you think she's waiting for a forward movement. But I would have reinforced that, him just staying there. But I'm a trainer. So she's amazing, this caregiver. So this is the 4th session, everybody. He's already starting to be out while she's getting ready. He's already farther than he was. And I want to tell you, this was hours. Nope. This was 4 to 5 minute sessions of capturing, along with setting up a comfortable environment. His tail is up and curved. He's exhibiting normal like paw play behaviors. And she tells me, she's like, he's pawing at me, but his claws aren't out because he's playing to get the treat. This is huge. And at the end of this video, he rolls on his side and you have to remain calm and not be super excited. But she called me after, showed me the video, and we cried and screamed together. And now he is a very happy, comfortable boy, and he had a medical groom, and it's just beautiful. So just some general training tips. And this is more with when we're doing the marker training. So let's say you're teaching a sit, you're not going to push the cat's butt down, right? We're not going to move, even with capturing. The cat chooses where to start. I'm not going to have you bring them close to you and then you start capturing. You start where they are. We have to start in their non-stressful starting point. And that's why I think this is so successful, because we're respecting their body language and we're going at their pace, which looks different for every cat. But as you can imagine, everybody, when you work with the individual cat and go at their pace, they do a lot better and they learn a lot quicker. So you want to click right at the moment to indicate the desired behavior. You don't want to click more than once because some people get a little excited with the clicker. And every time you click, even if you click by accident, you reinforce the cat. And whether it's a capturing session or it's targeting or one of the other clicker training behaviors that I tend to teach after capturing, those sessions are only 1 to 3 minutes. And we already kind of talked about making a plan, finding things that the kitten likes, going at a pace they're comfortable with, and staying under threshold. So this is just a lovely infographic from one of my handouts with green, red, right? So this would be an example of me working on petting a cat. We may not do this whole plan. We might not I think of it as a staircase. The goal behavior is me touching the cat twice. And when I say stroke, I mean starting at the neck to their mid back in this context, because I'm that specific. Because when I say pet, I see what people think of as petting, and my job as a teacher is to provide criteria. So when I say stroke for this specific foster I was working for, stroke meant starting at the neck, which is a non-stressful starting point for most cats, but and then going to mid back. But other people might say, if I didn't give that, they might misinterpret that as pet from neck to tail base 5 times. I'm like, whoa, slow down. So they were short sessions. She would record them for me. And also, I think it's helpful for you to learn. I record my sessions. That's why I have so many great videos. So walk towards the kitten, stand to the side of the kitten, place hand near kitten at a distance, touch kitten for 2 seconds, increase length of touch to like 3 seconds, stroke kitten from shoulders. Oh, I said shoulders to tail. Ha, see, specific. And then stroke kitten twice. So this was a foster who the kitten was about 3 months when I think he was about 8 months. No, let me think. I see a lot of cats, everybody. Oh, she got the kitten at 10 weeks and she made a lot of progress. She's awesome. And now the kitten was about 12, 13, 14, 15, probably 17 weeks. And she was aware that he would never solicit attention. And he didn't enjoy being petted. And she recognizes that's something that I want him to be comfortable with to set him up for success. And that's something that caregivers like to do. So she reached out to me and we worked together for a classical counter conditioning and desensitization plan. This is just a brief overview of that. And within, a month, he was adopted and enjoyed being petted. So these things can make a really big difference. I love it. It's important. I already talked about picnicking because it's so powerful, providing positive, consistent, and predictable human-cat interactions. I think that this is huge. I work with a lot of kittens with medical issues, and they may be an ISO. And again, ideally, we're providing enrichment for every cat. But if you have cats in ISO or whose only interactions are being medicated, you better have some enrichment for them or some other interaction. Like the one shelter I work at, we get in full ISO gear and we do targeting with these kittens, because if these kittens' only interactions are being traditionally restrained, because unfortunately many people aren't familiar with other handling techniques, or even if they are utilizing feline friendly handling techniques, if they don't feel good and if their only experiences with humans is when they are getting medicated, that I understand why once they're feeling better, they aren't going to do well in a home. That makes sense, right? So an easy way to help with that is, hey, we're going to do a minute target session. The one shelter I work with I did Cat Positive, which was a program where we taught shelters body language, feline friendly handling, and clicker training. And they would just go into the ISO area and each cat had their own popsicle stick for a target. And they would just work on targeting for 5 minutes. And just that little thing made a really big difference. But also it's ideal to learn more in-depth handling skills. So feline friendly or fear-free handling, right? This is an example of that. This adorable kitten. Here is another, this is an older cat. That is my friend's kitten and I'm me.
Okay, let's remove.
And this kitten didn't have trauma.
To come back for the game again.
So we're working on him being comfortable on his back. And he actually gives me consent by coming back. But also he's exhibiting minimal to no signs of stress. The way I move him, I'm supporting him.
We're just hearing you being on your back with good stuff.
So I'm not touching his paws yet. Now I'm adding touching paws. It's like, what was that? And then I was like, you can go, guy.
Okay.
Oh, he's like, he came back faster that time because he's like, dude, this game is awesome. This game is so cool. And he is now 6 months of age. And my friend can cut his nails happily. So my cue to start the game again is when he chooses to put 2 paws on me. That's just one example. So you've done a great job working with the more setting up a comfortable environment, working on building a relationship. But these things are needed. Let's say you do have kittens, neonates at your shelter. Please start a kitten kindergarten program. Because again, during that key socialization period, creating positive experiences are a lot easier when there aren't trauma and when they are in that period. So these are great things to do with those kittens, but also the fearful kittens, once they're more comfortable, we can start to do these things as well. So we want to, and again, with the guidelines of one thing at a time, monitoring their body language, pairing it with good stuff. So we want to expose them to unfamiliar items in the home. This is just an example from one of my kitten kindergarten classes. Substrates and textures, novel experiences, changing your body and face. So you can change, it's fun. You can change up your appearance by wearing hats and glasses around the house. Like I made an infographic during the pandemic about pairing masks with good things, and it went viral because no one thought of that. And a lot of animals were really afraid of us because, hey, everybody, they've never seen a mask before. So we need to make that not scary. And sometimes if we're ahead of the game, we can prevent that fear from increasing or prevent it altogether. So I might change up my gait. Again, you could have a lot of fun with it. In my kitten kindergarten class, I have a wheelchair and crutches because there's so many beautiful, amazing, different types of people. There's different gaits. And I want this animal to feel comfortable. And I understand whether you're socializing a puppy or a kitten, you can't expose them to everything, nor do I want you to. But when we provide these experiences to these animals, they generalize, right? So I didn't experience everything when I was a child. I never even left the country until recently, which is a bummer, but I had enough positive experiences that I then generalized, hey, most people are good. Hey, I'm going to smile at this right? Whatever it may be. I'm very extroverted, so I love people. So this is an example of me changing my gait. And so the cats, you see, they startle a little bit when I shake the bag. So then I was like, oh, I might not shake, but they instantly return to baseline. So these kittens are in that key socialization period where I was like, I'm just going to walk weird and have a bag. And now they don't even care about the bag. They're like, give me treats. He was like, what are you doing with your hand though, weirdo? But this is an example of like a game. I know this looks weird, but I have fun with it. So this is me just playing with kittens. And I have a beer mask on and bunny ears. And then I have sunglasses and a face mask. And we were just playing. Hey, I just look a little different. We're going to play. I'm not going to add 5 things at once. We'll work up to maybe adding a coat and then crutches, right? Whatever that may look like. I have a lot of Fit Paws stuff, which is for rehab for cats and dogs. And that's what this is. So it's just a different substrate. Like I'll bring some grass in or have them walk on a baking sheet. I mean, you can get really creative with the novel substrates. So again, there's no forcing. It's just, hey, here's this thing. Do you want to, and you see how it changes. It kind of wobbles a bit. That other kitten is.
And it's ribbed.
And it's ribbed. So like, it's just different textures, different walking surfaces, novel items that they're choosing to approach. And these are kittens in that key socialization period. So as you can imagine, I don't have to break it down into as many steps. Oh my gosh, you're cute. I can't even with you. I don't get to hang out with enough kittens. You only see severe medical issues. I only get to deal with all the hard stuff. I need a break. I need a kitten class. Take care of yourselves, everybody, mentally, because when all you see is severe behavior cases, it is rough. This is reminding me, though. Thank you for this reminder. I need to have a class again. Of course, the carrier is really important. And when it comes to carriers, I have a lot of resources on my social media, on my website. I'm very passionate, if any of you cannot tell, and I create lots of resources because I know that information is limited out there, and I'm trying to make it as accessible as possible. Carriers should be big. Again, like these book bag carriers that cats can't even turn around in. No one's telling me how the cat feels. It's mind blowing what we're doing. And with some of the products we are making, a cat should be able to stand up. If they should be able to walk through the door, and the sides should not touch them, because the amount of cats I know that have severe trauma to carriers, and it's because they've been too small their whole life. If you're a tall person on an airplane, I have empathy for you before we even get on the plane. Imagine if you were a tall person and you had to sit in an uncomfortable plane before every time you went to a vet visit, or I mean a human medical visit. They're all the same to me. You would really dislike going to the doctor. So this is a kitten kindergarten class. So we made it comfy in there. This kitten's gonna outgrow this carrier, but right now it's an appropriate size. They get treats in there. And then we're gonna close the door for 1 second while the kitten's eating, once and whatever, and then we're gonna open the door. And then we might work up to lifting the carrier up from the bottom, maybe taking 2 steps, putting it down. We're gonna play with them in and around the carrier, all that. Oh my gosh, that's so cute. Play with everything. Sounds, right? So this is something that we can do in your kitten kindergarten classes, but also I love when rescues have standard operating protocols. They are actually crucial. And I'll see a lot of foster paperwork, which I think is great, but I'll be honest, there tends to be not very much on behavior. And this is something that all of you can do, especially like, hey, this takes a few minutes a day, it brings you joy, and it's going to set this cat up for success. So for example, you might have some reinforcers the cat likes, which can be play or a licky mat. You want to start, so there's a lot of apps. That's what I tend to use. A lot of them are for puppies because, again, kittens are kittens and need socialization, but the resources are lacking. So there's a lot of puppy socialization apps, or you could just on Apple Music or whatever's on Android, I'm not hip. You can find lots of different sounds, but you want to start with those sounds very low while the cat's eating on the licky mat. And let's say the cat's head comes, like let's say you turn it up a tiny bit more, the cat's head comes up, or the cat stops eating, but then they start eating within 2 seconds. Okay, that's one thing. But if the cat's head comes up and then they avert their gaze, or maybe their ears go to the side a bit, okay, that tells me we went high a little too quick. So I'm going to put it back down again. And some common sounds that I do are trucks. A new one I added in the last few years, people arguing. Something I didn't think about. And then I was like, oh, babies crying, thunderstorms. So again, similar to that CCCDS plan, we start at a non-stressful starting point and gradually increase it while pairing it with good stuff. Appropriate play, this is a huge one. We want to have caregivers simulate prey, stare, stalk, chase, pounce, kill, catch the prey. Something a lot of caregivers aren't as familiar with is they just take the wand toy away. And again, we're simulating prey. So it's really important to wind down play, because that's like can cause a lot of frustration to a cat. They can redirect to another cat or to you. Or again, we don't want a cat or a kitten to be frustrated. So what I mean by wind down is, let's say they're starting to get tired. We've all seen it, whether it's adult or a kitten. They're starting to move slower and just put their paw slowly on the cat wand. So they're telling us that they're like, this is so much fun, but I'm definitely getting a little tired. Or you may have to go to do something. You might be like, okay, we're going to do a 5-minute playtime. It's 4 minutes and 30 seconds or whatever. You're going to essentially wind down play. And how you do that is the bird starts to die, for example. So with a debird toy, I might flop it on the ground a few times, and then it's dragging a bit. And then when the cat paws at it, I drop it, and then I give them a treat. So we wind it down play, and then after their kill, they eat. It's also important to reward polite requests for play. Nobody does this. So cats will bring you a toy. Cats kindly ask for play all the time. It's just, as a human, we tend to focus on everything we don't like, not just with animals, but also with humans, instead of all the amazing behaviors that humans and cats are offering us all the time. So for example, if your cat brings you a toy and looks up, that is a polite request for play. So you might toss it, or you might get a wand toy and start to play with them. Some general rules: we don't touch cats while they're playing. I don't care who you are. The great thing about rules are they're general and they apply to all situations. We don't play with hands or feet or any body parts as play objects. And we don't swing or toss a toy directly at a cat's head or even in front of their face in general. Because fun fact, birds and mice and bugs, well, bugs sometimes do, but birds and mice tend not to fly into or crawl into a cat's face. And we want to simulate prey. Husbandry, again, I'm extra sensitive to this because of my background and the amount of animals I work with who aren't getting care or can't be medicated. And if a cat can't be medicated, their disease processes can't be managed. Thankfully, there's medication training. There's a lot of things we can do, even once cats are adults, to help with this. But when they're kittens, hey, I'm going to do mock exams like this. So this kitten is just eating off a licky mat. I'm mocking an exam, taking little breaks in between. And that I feed a lot with syringes. So I use syringes as treat deliverers during socialization, because again, easy way to make syringes positive. Like, this is just a fun exam. We're just doing a mock exam. You saw one of the nail trimmer videos earlier. I might take a towel out of the dryer and just place it, no burrito wraps, we're actually getting away from those, but place it over the cat loosely for 2 seconds, remove it. So I'm also getting the cat comfortable with towels. Lots of little things that we can do to make a big difference.
So you want to have everything ready ahead of time. So
oh, this is just an example of, I was at someone's house and they're like, hey, my cat needs cat. That's not what I was seeing them for, but they know who I am and my background. And they're like, he needs eye meds and he doesn't really like it. And I'm like, I'm so glad you mentioned that. Let's see what we can do in the moment to make it less stressful. And this is where skilled handling comes into play. So I was like, okay, let's find somewhere in your house that your cat already has a positive association with. Let's find a place that's elevated, because I want you to be able to give the medication. And a lot of the times we're all about wrapping these cats, putting them on the ground, where us as humans can't really, especially if we are veterinary professionals who do this all the time, it's really challenging to like give the oral med or give the eye med with you bent all over. So I care about my humans too.
Ideally, licky mat, treat, the actual meds, you're excited. This is a really great area to medicate her, because you can easily reach her and you're not struggling or.
So this is me explaining to the client, because I have clients just record me doing stuff so they have it.
I'm just gonna present.
So I was letting her know you can easily access her eye, because she lost one eye due to some severe medical issues when she was even younger. So this is me just assessing how she feels about the eye meds, which is why I'm just presenting it at a distance, and she explores it or doesn't even lift her head up when she is eating. So I'm like, I just want to see where we're at.
Experiences with these have not been the best.
Oh, look at you.
And this is just to help me get an assessment of where she's at. Yeah.
And again, whoops, it jumped everybody. It's been so friendly for us this whole time. So this is me just getting an assessment, because I'm going to adapt my approach based on the individual animal I'm working with. And this is where handling is a skill. And I'll be honest, what I was taught in technician school, they weren't skills. It was just force, and it wasn't very helpful. And I haven't utilized those things that I was taught in over 10 years. So thankfully, handling is a skill, and we're all getting better at it in the field. But I'm approaching her from the side. I'm just explaining to the caregiver I never approach full frontal. And then I'm using the treat to lure her. I'm getting an assessment of how she feels about me touching her head and simulating a sea hold.
Birds making sound. Good job.
The caregiver was wrapping this cat in a towel, which I understand. That's what the internet, she's doing her best. Was wrapping this cat in a really tight towel. It wasn't going well. So I was like, hey, let's just see how this looks. Either way, I can decrease stress in the moment. And this kitten did great. And now the caregiver messaged me a week later saying she loves her eye meds. And we didn't even do training. I just approached that cat as an individual and adapted my handling. This is another really great technique. I'll show it once I get on camera. But if we are, especially if you're dealing with someone who may not be as familiar with handling, instead of a towel wrap, we can take a towel and loosely wrap it around the cat, similar to a bib. And that's a really helpful technique. And then just some general medicating cat tips. There's a lot of text on here, but I think it's really important. I mentioned that, oh, it's jumping, y'all. It's being its own thing. Woo. But I mentioned that C hold. So you can see I haven't scruffed a cat in quite a long time, and I tend to utilize that C hold if I have to touch their face. In most cases, I teach a cat a 1, 2, 3 game, which you can all do with your cats or the cats in your shelter. I have videos on medication tips. Please check them out, because I'm sure all of you, we all want it to be less stressful for all of us. And I have tons of videos online that I cannot go into everything today. But this is just some steps written out that if we are going to pill a cat. So commonly with kitten kindergarten, we'll work on similar to what you saw me do with that cat. Pet their head, simulate a C hold, pet their head, simulate a C hold, and then I actually medicate them with a treat. So I do the medication movements with a treat, and then I reinforce them afterwards. So, hey, we practiced, I touch your head, treat, C hold for a second treat, C hold for a second treat, pilling you with a treat, and then I reinforce that. So again, these cats, even when they're older, I have one cat who literally just opens the mouth for the caregiver. It's amazing. She says pills and he just opens his mouth. So the great news is there are lots of things that we can do to help, especially with these kittens who ideally don't have a lot of trauma yet, or even if they do, there are so many things we can do to make these things less stressful. So just a few general medication tips besides the actual handling is the 1, 2, 3 game, which you can find on my socials, as well as high value food. I do not recommend putting meds in food. I'll be honest, that's something I recommended as a baby tech when I didn't know as much. And now I'm like, what was I thinking? Know better, do better. We all are learning, because not only is that not going to work in most cases after a few times, but also it can cause a food aversion. And now we have a whole nother issue. But could you find 2 to 3 high value reinforcers like whipped cream or churro or whatever it may be, and give the cats it in that? Yes, I'm okay with that. But let's stop telling people to put meds in food. For dogs too. Let's just not do it, because the likelihood that there will be an issue is high, and I can tell them to do the 1, 2, 3 game or just give it in a separate thing, and it's as easy but with a better outcome. So why wouldn't we do that, right? I also love capsules. I use capsules for medication training. These are empty. A lot of medications, everybody, taste like crap. So not only does this cat not feel well, right? But now we're telling them to taste something disgusting. So something that's really helpful is if we put them in a capsule, the cat doesn't taste it, whether they're eating it in a food or we're pilling them. I also love capsules because I have 6 senior animals. It's so much fun with lots of chronic medical issues that are thankfully managed. And obviously I'm going to consult with the vet, because in most contexts, it's not a problem if it goes into a capsule, but we always want to ask because every drug is different. But my one cat, she's on 3 meds. We just put 3 meds in 1 capsule. And even though she likes being pilled, I still rather only pill her once. So capsules are the awesomest. Compounding medications, a lot of people aren't as aware of the compounding medication options out there. Now, sometimes I'll see someone get like fish flavored and they're like, it just works. We still have to do additional work. It's not a magic trick, but there's tiny tabs, which is Wedgwood and other compounding pharmacies that are the size of my pinky nail. And again, I can take a tiny tab and 3 tiny tabs of different meds that are usually a lot bigger and put them all in 1 capsule. So I can go on and on about the different options with compounding medications. I just realized that a lot of people aren't aware of all the options out there. Also, pill cutting, because we're going to utilize, if I can make this smaller, make it easier, put it in a capsule, ask for help. There are resources out there. They're not as many as I'd like about medicating cats, but I have tons. There's a few other awesome people with them, and people are here to help. Fear-Free Happy Homes and Fear-Free have a lot of free resources. You're not in this alone. We know it's hard, but hey, ask for help. And then of course, those handling foundations, gentle control, considered approach, all of that lovely stuff really helps. So to end, I'm ending right on time. These are a few of my favorite things. You most likely have your favorite things. I don't know why cats love the Zoom groom. I personally, I don't think it's great, but it's not about me. So I'll usually put a Zoom groom on a dowel rod and work towards them choosing to approach it, and then maybe add one pet for a second on the head, neck, and shoulders, and then gradually increase that, and then add a human hand later. I do love licky mats and those fish fillet things, as well as churu and those fish fillet things, because they just break so easily, are two of my favorite things based on what cats like. And then heated cat beds, lots of other fun stuff. So when it comes down to it, we want to set up the environment, start small and work up, one thing at a time, pair with stuff the kitten likes, reward for interacting with new stimuli, go at a pace the kitten is comfortable with, assess body language throughout, keep it fun, everybody. So be prepared for 2 steps forward, 5 steps back. If that cat has some medical issues and needs to be seen and they're uncomfortable, they're nauseous, I understand that they may take a step back, but that's okay. Things happen. But we need to do that and then adapt our plan. No big deal. Let the cat show who they are, accept their quirks and limits, and you will have a friend for life. I have a lot of awesome resources on my website. These are just a few that might be helpful. And then, of course, how to get started. You guys are already on it because you're attending continuing education and having staff and foster education. I offer kitten kindergarten workshops where we work on, it's an all-day event, and we work with the shelter to kind of really go in depth and talk about first steps, because this is a lot. So we want to start small with you as a human learner too. I'm a big fan of body language scores. If you are someone that's interested in behavior at your shelter, which I'm guessing a lot of you who are here are, ideally, let's empower those people. If you're management, hey, I'm going to empower the staff members that are interested in behavior to cheerlead this. I'm going to give them resources. I'm going to send them to conferences and workshops to learn more about this so they can teach everybody else, but also I'm empowering them by allowing them to do something they enjoy. And here are all my lovely social media resources. And thank you for everyone hanging out. I know that was a lot.
Super. It's awesome. Thanks, Tabitha. Excellent job. It was a lot. I became a ponytail person now. It's always whenever at these conferences, when it gets serious, the hair goes up. So for me, so you can tell I was like really thinking. So we have just a few minutes for questions. If you want to throw your camera on quickly, but leave your slide up so people can have your contact info. All right, quick questions. What was the tool you used in the video to give a kitten a food reward from a distance?
Oh, that was, I don't have one on my desk. I usually do. It's called a click stick, CLIK stick. And it's used for targeting, but again, I was utilizing it for that. So it's also great for the exercise I would recommend after capturing. So definitely something I'd invest in. It's like $15 on Amazon.
Okay, great. What is the prey in a basket toy you mentioned?
Ooh, wait, which one?
It was called prey in a basket toy.
Oh, good point. See, I was like, what did I mention? I use a lot of stories and I forget. I'm so cash. I'm a huge fan of ping pong balls as toys for cats. So similar to, it sounds silly, but like a ball full of, like a ball pit. Those bigger balls can be fun, but a lot of cats, I have ping pong ball pits. And ping pong balls, even on their own, like move like prey, even if you know nothing about prey. And you could even put them in like a little Ziploc container with a small amount of water so they can paw at it to help them get used to water. I mean, I love ping pong balls. They're the best and they're super cheap and you could buy hundreds of them at a time.
Great. Can you talk a little bit more about clicker mechanics, clicking too soon, too late, quieter clickers? When do you go into like an intermittent reward schedule?
So that is an in-depth question. So I can't cover too much of that, but I have a lot of resources on my website and my social media. And I'm happy, I have some clicker mechanic handouts for caregivers. So I'd be happy to share that with you if you email me. I also have clicker training, how to clicker train cat webinars and lectures that I commonly do. So I would definitely keep an eye out because I go into all of that. And as far as switching to an intermediate, so when we're using a clicker, we don't use a clicker for the animal's entire life. Like, for example, you don't always need a pouch and a clicker, but we use the clicker to teach the behavior because I can't just say sit. They don't know what the heck I'm doing, and I'm a bad teacher. So that's where I like the clicker as a communication. So in a training session, I'm always using that to communicate. And then, for example, my dog and cats no touch, so I could just say touch from wherever, and I'm still going to say good girl. So I'm going to give verbal praise, but I may not. So the clicker is usually used as a tool to initially teach that and then keep that skill up, because we're still going to practice it in a session format throughout, just maybe not as often.
Gotcha.
Great question.
All right, excellent. So Tabitha, again, thank you so much. And if you have not subscribed to her podcast, please join her podcast. I would love to encourage more podcasters out there to cover animal welfare issues. And we are both very much niche folks. And so please support it, and that would be great.